Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest episode of the Adopt 365 podcast. In today's podcast is all around Microsoft Ignite that we saw happen last week, and we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to get straight onto the subject, but we're also going to bring a few people in from our champions community to give us their thoughts and feelings around the technologies that were discussed and announced at Microsoft Ignite. So, as usual, I am joined by my co-host. So, I'd like to welcome Anthony.
Afternoon.
And Megan. But also joining us on the podcast this time, I
Hi, everyone.
would like to introduce Mark. Mark, do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction?
Hi, yeah. I'm Mark Smith. I'm the IT director over at Milton Langdon Accountancy Firm, regional accountancy firm based down in the southwest.
Fantastic, great to have you on, Mark. And also Ian. Again, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Barry. I'm Ian Summerfield. I'm the Learning and Development Manager at the Institute of Physics, based across the UK and Ireland.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys, and thank you for joining us on the first podcast. You two regularly join us before the podcast to give us your thoughts and feelings around the subject we're doing. It's also great to now have you aboard on the podcast to give us your thoughts and feelings. So, as we've discussed, this is all around Microsoft Ignite. Asked you guys to go away, think about something that stood out to you in terms of the announcement. So, Mark, we're going to come straight to you for your thoughts and opinions. What was the kind of standout technology or announcement, or maybe something that's relative to your organization?
Well, I think there are quite a few things that have just slightly evolved, I think, that we've just been waiting for, and some of the quite cool things, and some things that have been mentioned in the past that you've just been waiting for that final little bit. We talk an awful lot to our clients and have to collaborate a lot with our clients, and we currently use Teams a hell of a lot, as everyone does around the world now. But and we do share Teams out externally with some of our clients, which is quite a messy way to do it at the minute. You've got to share tenant, or you've got to share the team out, and then you've got to switch between tenants. You don't get your chat messages. And early days, it wasn't too bad because no one knew what was happening. But now everyone's using Teams, it's getting a little bit awkward. So the announcement that Teams Connect is coming out early next year, whereby you can actually add external parties into not only the whole team, but into the individual channels within a team without someone having to swap between tenants and miss messages and all those bits and pieces is potentially going to be quite a big game changer for us. And it's hopefully going to reduce the barriers and the delays between clients sharing data and communicating with us, I think.
Definitely. Is anyone else that's watching? Have you kind of experienced those challenges, or have you got any thoughts around the sort of shared channel functionality coming?
I
spend a lot of time kind of helping organizations configure their tenants, and we always come around to that discussion, the difference between a guest user and an external user. And it's always kind of quite complicated to explain that to people. And it's always a debatable point, but my recommendations at the moment are that, we only allow external users into our tenants, and we don't mess with the guest user access, just because of the complications that it causes. I looked at my tenant earlier, and I've got 10 other organizations' tenants that I can log into, and it just managing those is a nightmare. So I'm really looking forward to this functionality. I hope it delivers well, especially around the security piece, to enable us to make it a lot easier to integrate conversations and collaboration with external organizations. And it is something we do at Computer World with, every time we run a project with someone, we set up a team for them. It would be just so nice to set up a channel and share it directly with them, rather than relying on them leaving their environment and joining ours for the content we publish for them.
And I think that's probably the first time I noticed that it was a bit clunky, and it was during the early deployment of Teams with you guys, in that we first of all we did exactly that. You guys set up a team that you shared with us, and then I was missing messages from you guys, or I didn't know, am I talking to Barry or Megan on your side of it, or is it on my side of it? And we just kept missing chat messages. And you do an app mention within a document within Teams, and you're doing the wrong app mention, or something just isn't quite going right. So I think you're right. The collaboration piece should hopefully start being so much more seamless once they're actually integrated into that channel, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that a lot of people I think will benefit from. That I think there is a feature that I've not yet seen be talked about that I think is needed, that is actually available on Teams mobile devices but isn't available in the Teams client itself, and that's the ability to be able to switch between enterprise accounts quickly and easily inside the Teams client. Now, I appreciate this probably doesn't affect many average organizations that use one tenant, maybe collaborate with some others, but with people such as consultancy firms like ourselves, you may have an account where you're logging into us, you may be logging into Milstead, I might be logging into IOP. We will have multiple accounts where we are actually users in all those tenants. And the only way today to do that inside the Teams window client is physically logging out and logging back into the client each time you want to be in each of those tenants. And again, that is another cause for challenge mark. So actually in your tenant, there's probably 3 Barrys. There's the guest Barry, there's Barry at Computer World, and there's Barry at Milstead, for example. So your user's trying to message me, and all of a sudden I'll log into my admin account to do a bit of work for you guys or something like that, and I'll find out that someone inside Milstead has sent me a message on there, and I feel really bad that I've not replied in 2 months since they sent me the message or something like that. So I think that's one feature that I'm waiting to see as maybe an extension to that shared channel Teams Connect environment. So Ian, have you got any points on that at all?
Yeah, it's a similar one to what you've just described, Barry, is that some of my colleagues have multiple M365 accounts with different organizations purely because of the jobs that they do. So especially with university accounts. So they're not just employees of the IOP, but they're also academics within a physics department of a university, and that changing over from one M365 account to another is something we're looking forward to. And I think I can agree entirely with Mark that having Teams Connect and having that ability to share a specific channel that doesn't necessarily mean that an external person from outside your tenant has to be part of the team is going to be a real game changer, and will allow people to share and collaborate on documents, on chat in such an easier way. So really looking forward to that.
Good, right. So on to the next subject then, and over to you, Ian, and you've picked probably the biggest subject of the IT, technology, ethical community, and Microsoft's take on the metaverse with Mesh for Teams. So Ian, what were your thoughts around Mesh?
Yeah, Mesh for Teams, interesting concept. I love the idea. I will be honest, I thought how they presented it, especially on the first day, as part of the keynote presentations, was a little bit disappointing. I didn't feel that they presented it in the best way possible. Now, whether they chose the clients that they have that are using Mesh now, whether they were stuck with numbers, so to speak, and they were limiting it, I don't know. But as a concept, I think this is a great one, especially when you have individuals in an organization that may be a bit shy, they're introverts, that they find it challenging to interact in a virtual meeting or a hybrid meeting, and to have that mixed reality platform that Mesh is going to give you, with the ability to create your own avatar, and that you can have things, especially with Whiteboard. That's the best and exciting thing about Mesh, is the interaction and integration of Microsoft Whiteboard, which I personally think is a great tool and a great application that we don't see being used enough, but it will be once Mesh comes on board. And to have that integration and have your avatar working with other avatars on this massive unlimited whiteboard, which you see in that mixed reality, and the fact that you don't need a headset, you don't need an Oculus or HoloLens or anything to do this. This is going to be shown on your normal monitor screen or your laptop screen. I think this is really exciting. But as I said, bit disappointed about how they presented it. It felt a bit, I felt a bit uncomfortable, and it made me feel, I don't know, it's made me squirm a little bit about how they presented it on the day.
So certainly something I've got some opinions on. But first of all, Megan, I know this was something that you were quite had some opinions on, shall we say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the way they presented it was much better than when they presented it in March and it all went to that trippy bit and they were all sort of dancing around a campfire. This was a lot more realistic in the business world than what that was sort of 6 months ago, because I did not understand that. But I like the idea, and I think, as Ian said, it's really good for those people that maybe want to interact in a different way than what they currently have the opportunity to do. My only thing is, I'm somebody who loves to see people's facial reactions, their body language, and I don't feel you truly get that through an avatar. I know you got like your iPhone ones where you can be a chicken, and even though you stick your tongue out and it sticks, you don't get the full experience. You don't see that full facial expression, and I think that's going to be the same in Teams. So I really like the idea of everyone going into that full immersive sort of experience, like they showed you with, was it Accenture, the example that they used when they were in like a full office with the whiteboard. I love that idea. I think that's really good because everyone's in the same sort of experience then. The bit I really didn't like was when they had the Teams meeting and half the people had their cameras on like just normal and then half of them were avatars. For me, I wouldn't be able to engage with that. I wouldn't be able to necessarily take it as seriously seeing somebody's avatar there in a Teams meeting. So I like the idea. I like the full experience, but I would not want to sit on a meeting with somebody who looks like a fake avatar because I would not be able to engage with it properly.
The other thing I wasn't sure about was the fact that everybody didn't have any legs. That really, yeah, we were sort of floating around like Harry Potter ghosts. It
The
was a bit
developers ran out of time to do legs.
I think it's quite a good realization of where we are at the minute, because there's many people, even within my organisation, that I've never seen their legs because you haven't seen it in the last 18 months. So maybe people haven't got legs now. Who knows? But it looks quite realistic.
Mark, can you see a use for the metaverse in a professional services organisation such as yourself?
What I can't get my head around is it a little bit of a quirk? You know, is it something that's quite cool? There's absolutely no question that if you've got the ability where you can have different people from different geographical locations around, as far as you're concerned, a physical table, and you can do those brainstorming sessions, that side of it, I completely get. And I think now we're having more and more sort of networking events and things like that. You get such better feel for that when you're around that side of it, this sort of augmented reality side of things. Having an avatar, I don't think I would ever pick one personally. I don't think I'd ever use one. But I completely get what Ian's saying, in that some people, or even, you know, you wake up in the morning, what at the minute, you know, people who wake up, they're feeling rough for, I'm not going to say the word, you know, they've got an illness, shall we say. They don't necessarily want to be on a camera because they're feeling rubbish, but they still want to engage a little bit more. I've had quite a few meetings over the past few months where someone's not come onto the camera because they've been feeling so rough, and it is so much less engaging. But I don't want my avatar to smile because I've written something. But it does sound like they are going where the stage whereby the cameras will pick up your facial, so your camera will be on, but your camera, it won't show your camera, it will detect your facial recognition, and it will know when you're blinking, when you're smiling, when you're tilting your head, when you're rolling your eyes, you know, all the cues that Meg and you were talking about that are really important for these things. It might get to a stage where it starts feeling natural, but I think to start off with, everyone will have them, everyone will use them. 3 weeks later, most people will turn them off at the minute, is my feeling for it. I hope it doesn't, because I think they have got those small use cases where someone just doesn't feel like going on camera every now and then, but it would potentially be a bit more engaging, maybe.
I was going to say,
I was going to say, I agree with what Mark said around there'll be a massive spike and then everyone will stop using it. It's like the virtual backgrounds. When everyone started, everyone had the quirkiest virtual backgrounds, and it was almost a competition as to who could have the weirdest. And then now everyone just blurs their background or just goes to a normal sort of natural background.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, you know, okay, that you've got the wow factor of this, but what's the reality of it. What's the reality of it going to be in the real world? I mean, I find it really difficult if I'm on a meeting and people haven't got their cameras on. So I still kind of always ask people to put their cameras on, but people are still reluctant to even do that. I can see this kind of metaverse thing working in situations like products like Second Life, where you're going there, you're role playing a virtual role. Within that, you might go to events and they have monetize those, and that's become kind of a commercial environment. But in the business world, I'm with Megan. I want to see people's faces. I struggle enough of having almost 2 years of not physically seeing people. So the fact that I might be not even seeing them on a screen is going to affect the way I can communicate, and it really does. So I think it's a little bit, it's a bit of a gimmick. I don't see what the real benefits of it are in a business world, but I always open-minded to see what it could turn into.
I've been minded, as everybody's been speaking about, that this is step one of that future where people adopt using the mixed reality lenses. Now I know they're prohibitive. A decent one is £3,500, but it will come into its own once you see that kind of adoption and engagement with those lenses, because then you really get that full immersive augmented reality, mixed reality experience with those HoloLenses. And this is an extension of what they were trying to do with all the aspects of M365, and we've seen some promotional videos, not just at this Ignite, but the one 6 months ago, where you saw individuals in a Teams meeting leap out in front of you because you got a HoloLens on, and that kind of experience where people are in there and you're moving it around, a la Iron Man in the Iron Man in the Avengers films. It is something that Microsoft are looking to really push. But as I said, I think this is this first step where we're saying, look, you can have mixed reality. You have mixed reality. You don't have to buy the equipment, but you can get even more if you take up the lenses as well. And I think that's where they're going.
I think it's really quite interesting. There's some interesting points there. I think I certainly share lots of the opinions you've got there. I completely agree in that this is a first stage into a world that could be very different. And going back to, I think it was March's Ignite, they showed a lot more of the augmented reality scenarios where you were being able to have models in front of you, or some people were virtual and some people were in the rooms. I definitely think I can see more use. I think I agree maybe with Anthony, and I think Mark, you mentioned this as well, that it was around specific scenarios that much more likely to go and do this phenomenon in a meeting, want to jump on a whiteboard and go and do it, rather than it being a day-to-day interaction or something like that. Microsoft already have a technology that I don't know if any of you have looked at it, called AltSpace VR. You can sign up for free, you can go and attend conferences, you can just go and set your own rooms up, and it looks very similar on the face of it to AltSpace VR with Teams integrated, if I'm completely honest. I was in complete agreement that the legless look confused me. I don't know why people had to be legless. Maybe it's the night after the morning after the night before. But from that perspective, that looked a bit strange. But one of the areas that I'm thinking is with this whole focus on the metaverse at the moment. Obviously, Facebook have now rebranded their parent company Meta. There's lots of controversy now because is it Mark Zuckerberg going to be in control of the metaverse? What does that mean? Well, actually, the metaverse seems to be a number of unconnected virtual worlds rather than being any kind of universe that you will go to an alternative world. It's different people's alternative worlds. But certainly Mark Zuckerberg was talking about when you're in the metaverse that there being banner ads on buildings, that people could pay for banner ads on buildings, or you could go to a virtual shop that would be, I'm going to show my age now, you go into a virtual Woolworths. We haven't had Woolworths in this country for many years. Go and buy your virtual pick-a-mix or whatever. I'm definitely showing my age now. But from that experience, I think It's going to be quite interesting to see how the metaverse, and if Facebook are successful or others are successful in that space, will influence the next generation coming into our working practices. So if the people that are being born now, or were born 5-10 years ago, my daughter, for example, is 6 years old, as she grows up and gets to working age, will she be used to being involved in some kind of metaverse environment? So actually, naturally, when she uses Teams or whatever is available at that point, will actually that be the technology that they choose to use? And it isn't about, we talk about millennials, and I am a millennial, I'm proud to say, that they like texting, they don't like to get on the phone or meet people in the first place. Well, actually, the millennials of tomorrow, and I don't even know, is it Generation Z or whatever the correct terminology is, they like to be in the metaverse. It's not about texting, that's so old school. It's about being behind a virtual character that you can look how you want, be how you want, display how you want. It's all about empowerment. It's all about choice and flexibility. And this is why tools like Microsoft Teams are having to adopt that now, not for us, not for the generation today, but for the generation of people coming tomorrow. I don't know what people think.
I completely agree, and it's not stopping. And Facebook had done a very good plan of making everyone think they thought of the metaverse. I mean, it's been around for years, and they've been talking about it. And the likes of Nike, I know Nike have now bought loads of land in Decentraland, and so they are aware that it's coming. NFTs are just absolutely crazy at the minute for buying the virtual apparel or whatever it might be. It's not stopping, that's for sure. And I think you're right. Even when you say something about Facebook, you almost feel quite old now, because Facebook was the thing that maybe, it was 10 years ago, whereas now even Instagram's starting to almost get some of that sort of feeling. So the next thing in the consumer world is going to be the metaverse. It's going to come, and it's just working out for me how that links into work. Is it just a case of it blends into work because people are used to doing it? They're used to the tech, since the tech services came into the business world, or is the business world going to drive it for the consumer? Which I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to be pushing from the consumer side into the business at the minute. 5 years down the line, we're not going to have these little avatars with no legs, I don't think. I think that is definitely version 1 of it. And the augmented side of it, I think, is where it could really boom as well.
When I was a kid, I used to play Police Quest. I don't know, I had an Atari ST, and I played a game called Police Quest, and there was a little, I don't know what it would have been, an 8-bit character of this man walking around through the police station. It kind of feels like that first version of the gaming environment that I was looking at then. Sorry, Anthony, I spoke over you.
I was just going to say, it just shows how visionary The Matrix was, that film, which is like, it could go in that direction, where we're all sat behind the scenes being someone else in a different world. And I must go back and watch that film, because I was obsessed with it when it first came out. It was the first time I had surround sound on a TV, and there's some incredible scenes in that, but I've not watched it for a while. But it might be worth a revisit.
Especially as they're doing the brand new film launching later this month.
Are they?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's one of the things for me on Mesh that was quite interesting. I think they announced half 2 of 2022 was going to be the initial iteration that was going to be available. The pieces that I haven't yet seen is they spoke a lot about Accenture building a environment that they had rolled out 800 headsets to people so they could be in a fully immersive experience. Undoubtedly, what was shown, I did like the whiteboard component of that. The water cooler component was interesting, where you could just bump into people maybe as part of an onboarding experience rather than people hanging out there all the time. Maybe that's where you go and meet your virtual buddy, and it's a kind of forced experience rather than it being a natural experience that every day you go to the water cooler in Mesh. The bit that I'm really interested to see is what does it look like at end of half one of 2022. Is it just the avatars in the meetings? Will you need a Microsoft Surface or some other device that has infrared sensors built into it rather than your standard Dell laptop that maybe doesn't have that? And how much of it is going to be accessible to your average IT consumer, average IT department without coding and building your own 3D world? So quite a lot to see there, and I think hopefully by this time next year we'll have a bit more of an understanding as to how it's actually going to be implemented inside our businesses. So to move on, Anthony, for you, it was all about Microsoft Teams and the wider 365 and live components that are on their way.
Yeah, I think we'd had a bit of a preview of live components, so they talked about it, but this ability to have multiple people co-authoring a table or a to-do list or something like that. But one of my bugbears with Microsoft is that they launch things and then you just have to sit and wait for when they arrive in your tenant, if they arrive in your tenant. But I was really pleased with it within a couple of days of Ignite. I spotted that the live components had appeared on the bottom of my chat box, and Megan and I were able to create a 3x3 matrix and test them thoroughly by playing noughts and crosses on it. But yeah, that was just really a kind of a thing that we've been looking forward to. Now we've got it, you're almost trying to find a use for it and talking to clients about it and how they can use it. And that's always my approach to these things. When you see a new bit of functionality, try and work out where it's going to play out best and how it's going to create efficiencies within a business. So it's good to see that arrive. And then I think, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder here, but the role that those components play within the Loop application is quite significant, but I'll leave someone else to talk about those. But yeah, if they've not arrived in your tenant yet, then they should do fairly soon. I think it's only in the public preview at the moment, but if you're in public preview, then you should find those there. Try them out and see where they work in chats and how you can use them in the business.
Who wants to have a go at explaining what Microsoft Loop is then? Don't all put your hands up at once. There you go. Mark unmuted first. Go on, Mark.
I blinked too quick, didn't I? I think we were chatting about it earlier, weren't we? And it's quite a wide stretching thing, isn't it? It's whether you're talking about the components within Loop, where you've got the single point of truth across multiple different areas, which is a bit the part of it that I liked, rather than the Loop application itself, whereby you can have a PowerPoint presentation within a Word document, within a Teams message, and to more what Anthony was talking about earlier, rather than having to necessarily know what application you go into. And I think that's where the Loop application probably more comes into itself there, in which case it's just like the workspace where everything can potentially go into, which could work quite well, but it's trying to understand where that currently fits in, I think, with the rest of the organizations, and does it start replacing some of the other products, or does it just complement some of the other products that are there? So I definitely like the idea of the dynamic part of it and the dynamic components that Ian was talking about. That's the bit of it that I really like the sound of. The ability to be able to have one bit of information spread across multiple different areas, but it is a live copy of that data. So if you've got an agenda, you're editing it within the Word document, or you're editing it with Teams, or you're editing it with a Loop. It doesn't really matter. It is a live collaboration, which I think is one of the big things that within Microsoft 365 over the past couple of years, I don't think people necessarily understood the power of co-authoring on any documents when it first came out. And now I think we take it massively for granted when we then go back to a document that's not in OneDrive or something like that, and you get the document going around, 3 or 4 people being sent to it, and you're thinking, oh, I want to work on this live. You don't realize quite the power that's had, I think.
Definitely. Ian, you had some quite interesting thoughts from yourself as to how the Loop application might evolve.
Yes, I definitely see it as a successor of the aims of Microsoft for OneNote. So for those that aren't aware, OneNote came out around about the end of the 20th century as a way of collaborating in a workspace as a canvas and bringing various documents and images. But it didn't quite work because of the synchronization element of it. And for those that remember when we had to dial up to get into the internet and stuff, and you had to rely on all that. And whilst OneNote is being brought into the M365 family, it's still based on that old syncing technology. And I see Loop as definitely that successor. And whilst they're still going to keep OneNote, is that real virtual ring binder, which is its strength really, and a place of meeting notes in one place. I think Loop is going to be that real successor where you have that blank canvas and you can bring lots and different multiple formatted documents into one place. And it's going to be a complement to Teams, and it's not going to replace it, because if you think about Teams as that all-encompassing collaboration space, which is brilliant for it, it's there for virtual meetings, it's there for chats, etc. But then you have this canvas that brings together all the M365 apps that you're working on in terms of a project or a particular work process that is relatable to a Teams channel or an individual where you're having a chat, and you bring that into the chat. It's a fantastic element. And as Mark says, having the technology of real time and multiple editing on one document, that's where it's going to be its successor to OneNote.
Certainly a very interesting concept. I think, as you noted, OneNote was shown in it, but equally, I completely see what you're coming to. It allows these flexible canvases. Megan, would you be able to give it a go explaining, so as well as these components that we've spoken about, that there was an actual application that was discussed that would bring this all together, the Loop application. There were a number of elements that made up the application, almost a structure like in OneNote. Would you be able to give it a go explaining what those components or what those elements are?
Yes, I can give it a go. I don't know that I'm going to completely do it justice, because I don't think we truly understand the full potential of it yet. But the Loop application was made up of the three sort of elements, we'll call them, within it. So you had the Loop components. Loop components were like the elements that you're bringing into it. So like the conversations, like a OneNote notebook or a whiteboard that you're bringing that people can work on together. They're different components that you add into Loop. Those Loop components then make up a Loop page, if I am correct, which sort of has all that that you can create different Loop pages with all of those different components in to collaborate on, to give you those different areas of work, similar to how Teams channels are when you have those. But then within those pages, you can bring all of that into a Loop workspace, which then gives you the ability to fully track everything, fully have everything involved, collaborate on it, communicate on it, react to different things. So you have the workspace, within the workspace you have the pages, and then within the pages you have those different components. That's as I understand it at the moment. I don't know if anyone has anything to add, but that's as I understand it at the moment. But still, as I say, I don't know that I fully understand it. And like when I was referring to it then, I was almost explaining it as this bit's like channels and this bit's like your team. I'm slightly, I wouldn't say confused. I'm interested to see how it sits alongside Teams, because I do feel there are certain elements of it that overlap with Teams channels, Teams. So yeah, I'm just quite interested to see how they come into work in harmony rather than just giving you another place to work, because Microsoft 365 already introduces so many places for you to work and collaborate and communicate. Introducing another one, I feel like some users are going to love it, like they usually do, and some users will just sit there and cry because they don't know how to use it. So I'm excited. I'm a little bit apprehensive, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I always talk to people about, when we're talking about implementing Teams, about the number of different ways it introduces into your organization to communicate and collaborate. And this is just one more that needs to be written into your communications charter to say, that's how you use this bit of the functionality and this is how you don't use it. Because there's just so many things overlapping in the kind of the Office 365 jigsaw now. So yeah.
I just wanted to compliment Megan, because you described it perfectly, actually, about that workspace and then dividing it up into the pages, and then within the pages bringing in the components. And where I see it as a complement and not been at odds to Teams is, if you think about a Teams channel or a chat, you have the file tab, and that's great because you're bringing together relevant documents, be that a PowerPoint slide, an Excel spreadsheet, or a Word document, and you've got those under the tab in the channel. Where the difference lies with Loop is that you can have those documents which are relevant and integrated with each other all on one canvas, and you can see it all at once, rather than having to open 3 different applications whilst you're doing that collaboration chat. And I think that's the exciting bit, is that you can have a PowerPoint. You don't even have to have a whole presentation, for example. You can have just one particular slide and say, this relates to this Excel cell or series of cells. And that again is the exciting bit. You don't have to actually have the whole workbook in Excel relating to it. And then all of a sudden, instead of having to open lots of different places and switch from each application, Loop allows you within that page and that canvas to see it all at once, and then be able to collaborate and edit on each of those components.
Yeah,
I think it is
I
that
do
piece,
see
isn't it? It's the collaboration piece, I think, Ian, isn't it? That is the biggie, I think. And they got quite a good demo, I think, on the Microsoft website, showing it running live on how you can. I think it's like 4 or 5 people working in the same list, and one person's dragging a part that someone else is actively editing on above to section, from section 3 to section 2. Yet that person is still carrying on editing it, which is then relating to the page, which is then relating back to the workspace. And like I say, and it's a whole 1,000-foot view of an entire project or whatever it is, I think. And I'm confused, same as you, Megan, in that, is it Teams, is it Loop, is it OneNote? But the one thing I do like is, I think one of the reasons I'm confused is it looks like Teams, because the structure down the side, you've got your, if you will, your team, your channel going down. And it's good to actually see Microsoft for once sticking with something that's clearly working in Teams that people understand for that structure, rather than, I think, confusing everyone by going, oh, if you're in Teams, this is how it looks. If you're in Loop, this is how it looks. They seem to have finally got their head around human behavior and how people like to see things structured. And aesthetically, which is quite weird to compliment Microsoft on aesthetics, because they seem to be function, sometimes not even that, over how it looks, but it looks nice. I just don't get how I would use it.
The one thing I would say about the live components that I did really like, and it comes into that communications charter again, is if you have a live component like a table that people are editing and it's part of a team or a channel, but then somebody actually emails that to everybody, it will keep updated in both the email chain and in the team. So if you do have me, who always goes to team to do something, but you have Anthony, who may go to his email to look at something, we're both seeing the same thing. It's always up to date. We're always seeing that. So it doesn't matter if you go to either of them, because you're still seeing that updated. So I do like that bit, because then it makes the communications charter, it makes how people work, collaborate and communicate a little bit easier and simpler as well.
So here's my prediction. Next spring, when it's due to be announced, the announcement will be Loop is now part of Microsoft Teams. And you will be able to, in your teams, in your channels, maybe alongside your channels or as a subcomponent of a channel, on the left-hand side, be able to right-click and go create workspace. And the workspace then sits inside the channel, inside Teams. But maybe the Loop app still exists, but it maintains the structure that you've got there. So it allows you just a view of all the workspaces, whereas Teams allows you to do it. It's certainly, the workspaces have got to be available as a Teams tab at a very minimum. So whilst you have got that alternative view, you'll be able to do it. That's just where, and for me, it's just hearing you guys talking about how it's used, how the similarities be, what would stop it becoming a child object in a team, whether that's instead of a channel, alongside a channel, underneath a channel. I think it's really interesting. I think it shows an evolution. I think Microsoft were talking about it and they were very careful not to say, look, this isn't the death of Word, PowerPoint and Excel, but this is a new way of working. So actually, is this the next evolution of those standard Office applications? And no longer do you need to go into Word, PowerPoint, Excel. You go into Loop and you go create a document, create a slide, create a whatever, and this becomes a natural evolution where they're all flexible. I could send a single slide over to you, Mark, as Ian kind of described me, and you would be working on just that single slide, but it would already be embedded in a wider presentation that I was working on with other people. So really exciting, I think. I think there's a lot of clarity required. I think part of the beauty and part of the difficulty with Microsoft is they give us these tools and then allow us to think about how we use them inside our organizations. That works well for people like us at Computerworld that can help decipher this and help organizations understand that. But it does also create a challenge for end users that are going, hold on a minute, you've just introduced Teams. Now where does Loop sit in with this? And should I be using SharePoint or Teams? Or it creates chaos. So be interested to see how that matures and improves. So the next section, the next person, Megan, we're over to you now. And you're talking about one of my favorite applications in Microsoft 365.
Yeah, so I really liked the announcements that were coming to improve Office.com and the Office application. I love Office.com or the Office application to go to find all the recent documents that I've been working on. I can never remember what I've called them. So it's such a hassle for me to have to go through my OneDrive and search for it. The fact that I can do that in Office.com makes it so much easier. However, they're bringing a lot of new features and functionality to Office.com and Office application that I think is going to make it a more widely adopted sort of place to go when you are looking for things. So there's new things coming into it like recommended actions. So if you've been mentioned on a document or someone's tagged you in it and you haven't followed that up, it's going to recommend certain things that you probably need to do, maybe an action that you need to take, and it will show you those recommended actions. Or even if it's not on a document, it's just you haven't caught up with this person in a while, bringing in those sort of Viva Insights actions, bringing all of that in. It's just your place to go to see what have I potentially missed, overlooked, what have I got to do. So I really like that. I like the idea of actually being able to search and filter a lot more. At the moment, I like the fact that you can go in and see those recent documents. I think with the new version of Office.com, you're going to see an infinite amount of them. So at the moment, you can probably only see 20, maybe 30 documents that you've been working on. For me, if I worked on something 6 weeks ago, it's not in that list. I can't remember. So I can see that infinite list, which is always nice to go back and see all of that stuff. But also the search functionality. If you go in there at the moment, I can search for certain keywords, but that doesn't necessarily filter it by particular people or time, date, etc. And I actually had this problem this morning. I was trying to find a document that I knew myself and Barry had been working on. I couldn't remember if it was in my OneDrive. I couldn't remember if it was in a team. I couldn't remember if Barry shared it with me. So I was looking for it and I was searching my keywords, but it wouldn't let me filter it by saying with Barry or shared by Barry or anything like that. So it restricted me as to what I could find slightly. So I think the additional functionality they're bringing to that will come into that a lot more, and it will just make it a lot easier for people to find what they've been working on and sort of continue their work and get where they want quicker and be more productive using 365.
Has anyone got any thoughts on the Office app or what you've seen that's coming from that?
I will speak up, and I'm a big lover of Office.com and the desktop app as well. I'm completely with Megan. I think it's a great place, and what we're trying to do at the IOP, and I don't know if Mark is doing it as well, is trying to wean our colleagues off dear old File Explorer. Now, File Explorer is 25 years old, bless it. And is kind of falling behind a little bit with the M365 way of working, and I think that Office.com gives you that alternative, and working with some of the other M365 applications, like being online on OneDrive, using it via the web browser, is specifically. I cannot wait for these enhanced search, because the number of times we get asked, "Oh, I can't find this document," or I can't, you know, how do I find out what I was working on 2 weeks ago? And just by pointing them, even now, without these enhancements that are coming in to office.com, you see people squirm because they immediately think that you're going to take them to File Explorer, because that's where they're comfortable and familiar with. And I just think this is a great way of just bringing people away and actually letting them see what is potential about M365. It's not just about Teams as that collaboration tool, is that it's the whole way of working in the cloud, and that's the exciting bit. And as I said, I'm completely with Megan on this, that these enhancements that they're going to bring to the office.com, although small, are significant and will help our businesses, as I said, move away from that older technology.
Yeah, and I think we're further behind on our journey than you are. We've chatted about it a few times about sort of migrating away from the traditional file servers. It's something that we're doing ad hoc, and definitely the vision that I have is that you want as little on the whatever network drive that we've all got, and you know they'll always exist to a degree, but you want as little as possible that you can have on there. And I think the enhancements that we've all been talking about really highlight it. When I'm trying to find a document on our on-prem solution through good old Explorer, you've got to search for it. Oh, you got the word slightly wrong, and I might be able to search the date or how big it is, or you know, it's this standard old school searching technology that you can have. Whereas if you do go to office.com, you almost don't need to search for it a lot of the time, because you think about it, you type in one tiny little bit, and it's already there. And then you've also got all the bits from Viva sort of like just around the corner, where you can go, you sort of see something at the top saying, oh, have you actioned this, because you're looking at a document that someone else has been working on with you, and they've sent you an email where there's been a question in it, and how does that know I've got a task to be doing around this document? And it all just knows it within the same piece. So I think the more those improvements come on, the easier the migration for people like us and people who are significantly further behind on their journey to moving things into OneNote and SharePoint and whatnot. It's going to make that transition so much easier for people, because it's not an IT department saying we want to move these documents from on-prem into OneDrive because it's better for security, it's better for all the technical bits. It's actually better for user experience as well, which at the end of the day, that's all that the staff are going to care about. Is it better for me? They're not going to care about security and all those bits and pieces, because that's the IT department's problem. But it definitely shows how much more user friendly it's going to start becoming. That's for sure.
I think for me, and as I touched upon at the beginning there, it's one of my favorite applications. And the main reason for that is whenever I'm talking to customers that have got a real challenge, I don't know where to find my documents, Barry, really struggling to go and find it, I go straight to the Office app. You can open it with 3 taps on your keyboard, hit the Windows button, type OF, hit return, so 4, and you've got the Office app open on your computer. With the improvements that come in, especially the fact that you're going to be able to have your corporate templates in there ready to load, so that create element is there. It becomes the default flow to click create, choose the, for example, Milstead corporate document template, and that opens up then on Word on your computer, and you're ready to go. As Megan's already mentioned, the infinite scroll of the documents you've created in a timeline, that will help people find stuff. Yet to see whether the shared documents will go in there at the same time. The other thing that Ian, you did mention in the chat actually, and it's something I've been looking at recently. Lots of customers we work with and inside Computer World, we've been considering ways of how to share more information about ourselves with our colleagues in this hybrid world. And that brings back one of the oldest tools in the Microsoft 365 portfolio, being Delve, where you can go in and set your hobbies, your interests, your skills, your certifications. There's a fantastic set of information there. For anyone that isn't aware of it, log into office.com or any of the online applications, click your face in the top right hand corner and choose choose View My Office Profile. Inside there, go edit your profile, and you can see all of the elements that you can go and configure. You can equally then search for someone. So I could search for everybody in the organization that's interested in football that has got it inside their profile. It's such an interesting features and functionality. It's very underused though, and equally it feels a little bit legacy because it is in Delve. It doesn't look quite fresh. So actually, will that appear in office.com? Will that be part of what's going on? Is it going to have Viva Connect, your SharePoint intranet, appearing in there at some point? How far is this going to go? But from my perspective, I think the Office app will become a starting point for your journey, the first thing you open up in the morning and things like that. Ian, I didn't know if you had any final remarks on that.
Yeah, and actually we're very invested in using Delve, and all new starters into the IOP as part of their IT induction gets introduced to Delve. We purposely bring that out, and there is a bent reason for that. And you talked about saying what your interests are, what your topics, but you also list your skills, and that actually links in to one of the little team bots that you can have, which is the Who bot. And if you use Who, you can actually search for, tell me who speaks French in the IOP. And the Who bot will list, based on people's intervention into Delve, that they said, well, I speak so-and-so language. It's such a useful tool that integrates with the Active Directory of M365, that all of a sudden you have this really powerful skills search engine with Delve. And I'm with you, Barry. I think that if we see that legacy app, which you mentioned is one of the oldest ones in M365, but have that integrated in office.com, you've got another powerful tool and a reason why to really go to town with your internal profile.
Definitely.
I did some work on it recently, and I think it's had a bit of a graphical makeover because it doesn't look as old as it used to. But yes, getting people to maintain their own profiles on that is very useful. And people are often frightened when they first click on it because they can see everyone around them and what they're working on. So you just need to be aware that it's capturing all that information. But yeah.
So the final person is me, and the element that I've chosen, and I've cheated a little bit. I've chosen a number of smaller technologies in a broader subject. So meetings and chat was the area that one of the areas that stood out to me, over and above or alongside the ones we've already mentioned. So there was a number of new features that were seen within that. Probably my most favourite is the ability to talk to myself. I am sane, I promise, but I do make a lot of sense to myself. But I've been in that situation a number of times where maybe I've been on an Ignite session, I've been on my phone and something pops up on my phone. I think, oh, that'd be useful to Barry when he's back in work at 9 o'clock tomorrow. And I think I'll just ping myself a message on Teams because it'll be there when I get to the office in the morning, kind of thing, get to my study in the morning. It's not possible. So Megan and Anthony normally end up getting my rubbish because I ping it to one of them and I remember that I'll go and find it in the chat to them. But then you start getting the conversation, what's this? Oh, don't worry, I just needed somewhere to ping it. So that's going to be one very simple feature that is going to be available very soon. The other one is a number of improvements to the virtual event functionality. So a green room for your webinars. That's something that we've really noticed. So previously we used Zoom. We've moved over to use Teams webinars, but the real challenge is you don't have the ability to have a green room, someone to chat with people prior to your webinar starting, prior to you inviting the other people in, and also the ability to have some control as to who is displayed on the webinar, what content is displayed on the webinar. That's coming as well. The ability to have co-organizers. At the moment, it's only one organizer. We'll then be able to have co-organizers. I hope that means that they will also be able to see the meeting statistics and attendance reports and things like that, because that's a big challenge today. And another feature that is much needed is the Q&A feature in Teams webinars. So rather than just telling people to use the chat, there's an official Q&A. You can get people to ask questions and then actually answer them. These are things that we've been used to in Zoom and GoToWebinar and things like that for a long time, but something that Microsoft Teams really needed. but it was only 18 months ago. They didn't have a webinar functionality. So good to see the pace of change with that. And the final one that I'm kind of classing in there, or the final bit, is around meeting rooms, meeting room technology. Teams meeting rooms are absolutely fantastic, very simple to use. But the biggest problem that I hear is, what about those meeting rooms that are booked and the people don't turn up to the meeting for? I can't get a meeting room. They're all booked. I'm stood in the middle of the meeting rooms. I can see they're all empty at the moment. Microsoft have listened. You will be able to check in on the Teams meeting room panels outside the rooms. That's due very shortly. We will also see sensors that will be able to be paired with the Teams meeting room that will detect if actually there's people in the room or not. And best of all, if people aren't in the meeting room after a set defined period, those rooms will be freed up back to the calendar for other people to go and book. That is a feature that a lot of people have been asking for. And the final one is the hot desking type devices. So there's a Yealink Desk Vision AIO 24 coming out. It's a 24-inch monitor, can be used as a monitor, but equally can be used as a standalone Teams device. So if you have very small, I don't want to say a huddle space because I don't think you can huddle with yourself, but somewhere you want to just go and join a Teams meeting, you'll be able to have these type of devices in there. They're fully support hot desking, so they won't have to be signed in as an individual user, and you can join your Teams meeting room. And I know, Mark, we've certainly discussed the need for this. You're currently going for an office refit at the moment, so I don't know what you thought about that and those wider announcements.
Yeah, I mean, jumping on that last one, it was really bad timing and good timing in the same way, because we completely ripped apart our Taunton office, floor to ceiling, walls. It was an absolute building site 3 months ago. We've actually got carpet in there now and everything, so it's looking like an office, which is fantastic. But yeah, we've opted for, we don't want people to have to go into a meeting room necessarily, or use up a meeting room if they need that private meeting experience. And not everyone's got laptops, because some people's roles don't necessarily need laptops. So we've got these booths where people can go to if they just need to just get away from the office, because it's much more open plan than as it is in most places now. Get away without having to book out a meeting room. So we've got these smaller pods where you can either just go away and just do some work, if you just need to lock yourself away a little bit, but also you can have those more private video calls, if you will. So we were trying to look at the various different ways that we could have that set up for a complete standalone video call without someone either having to take their laptop, or if they might not have one. And the only way you could do it was pretty much putting a video room, a Teams room system in place, which is just massive overkill for this tiny little space. So yeah, those Yealink systems where you can just rock up, join a Teams meeting, they do look good, and they look good as well. We've seen some of the poly devices that were sort of almost trying to get there, and it looked a little bit 1980s. Some of them, I wasn't a massive fan on some of them, whereas these devices, they do look really good. And the same with all the other bits, like you mentioned in the meeting rooms as well. As part of the office refit, we've obviously upped our game on the office booking system. So we've got some of those room panels going in now, and we know what's going to happen, especially when it's a fancy new office, posh new meeting rooms. Everyone's going to want to book it. We've got all the new video conferencing systems, and then they're just not going to turn up. And the really important part on that for me is it looks like the reporting on that's going to be really good as well. So we can see the repeat offenders. So we can see the people that are booking out the meeting rooms every Tuesday for the next 6 months, and they've used it twice. So, floor space is a very expensive asset to have. At least we can make the best use of it, I think.
Yeah, indeed. Ian, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, very excited about the Teams meeting rooms. We're at the very beginning of the journey, and like Mark, so we've just had this week some sign-off approval from our exec on going forward with a complete revamp of our offices in London, and thinking about it in entirely moving away from those strict functional or Teams assignation of areas of our open plan, and then completely revamping it into far more collaboration, quiet areas, things like that. And then having the furniture and the infrastructure in place to support that. And what we're also doing is in preparation for the full integration of physical meeting spaces with Teams meeting is to upgrade our meeting room technology. So, which is pretty good at the moment, but it doesn't quite work with Teams meetings. This functionality means that the audio and the camera setups in all of the meeting rooms will have to be upgraded, but it means then that they will be fully integrated into the Teams meeting system.
And I think some of the Poly announcements that they had during Ignite as well. I mean, a few years ago, I was never a huge fan of some of the Poly kit, but you look at how much they've evolved over the last couple of years. In my view, I don't think there's much on the market, especially at the price point, that even comes close to it, to be quite honest. And they look pretty as well, which, you know, they've got to look good as well.
Definitely. Megan, you had some points on the chat.
Yeah, it was just one really that stood out to me around chat, and a feature that's coming is the ability to delay your send of a chat message. That's a big thing that we talk about when we're implementing Office 365, when we're talking around email, and that you might be happy to work at 9 o'clock in the evening, maybe Anthony doesn't. So if I am sending him an email, maybe I want to delay the send so it doesn't actually hit his inbox until 9 a.m. That's great because that works in Outlook, but you didn't have anything in Teams that sort of replicated that. So if I was happy to be working on Teams outside of hours, I can still bombard people with my messages. And if they haven't got their quiet hours set on mobile devices, it can still appear, etc. And it was just a sort of thing that wasn't there, so it wasn't really great for people's well-being. The fact that now what is coming is when you are on chat, if you're about to send a chat message out of hours, it will hopefully prompt you and say, do you want to delay the send of this message? You can still get it out of your brain into the chat message, but it won't actually hit the other people's chat inbox until you allow it to at 9 a.m. the next day or something. So small well-being feature, but can make a big difference as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. I'm very guilty of that as well. And you don't want people to reply. You're sending it, you don't want them to reply.
You just want it out of your head.
But if the phone beeps, they reply, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know if you can do a delay send to send to yourself, because I don't know if you're then going to Barry start replying to
That's
yourself.
what I was just thinking.
I'm not sure what's going to happen for that one.
He'll enjoy talking to himself enough, so it'll be fine.
Yeah. I was actually thinking whether Barry will need the talk to itself function if he can delay a message still to Megan and Anthony. So
Definitely. No, I think it's all good as to how all these things are maturing, how the room technology is maturing as well. Certainly, if anyone is interested and is looking at refreshing their rooms, we're running an event on the 1st and 2nd of December called Define Tomorrow. It's a Microsoft Cloud conference, and as part of that, on the second day, which is all about the modern workplace, we will be visiting the Poly Experience Centre in the Gherkin in London. So we're going to have a complete session, a tour inside Poly's Experience Centre, where we're looking at all these different technologies, looking at the type of rooms, the things that you should consider for the new ways of hybrid working, looking at some of the newer technologies like the really clever, I don't know if you've seen the E70 cameras that got dual 20 megapixel 4K lenses on them that allow you inside a meeting room to be able to segregate each person using artificial intelligence into an individual video stream. So no longer are you talking to a room when you're remote, you're talking to the individual people in the room. Lots of very clever technology. So if you'd like to register for that, go over to live.computerworld.co.uk, make sure that you're registered. You can pick your sessions. If you're more focused on the modern workplace, there's loads of good stuff on the second day for you, so you can just attend what matters to you. So as we do a final wrap up now, I thought it'd be good to just do a final around the room. Is there anything from Ignite that we've missed? Brief review of it. Maybe it'll have to be a subject of another webinar, because I think this is our longest webinar yet, but loads of good content. So Mark, any final thoughts?
Well, one really important bit that came out was the reactions that we've got in the Teams meetings. Used to have what you could clap, raise your hand, and do a love or whatever it is. I think they announced there's going to be 800 of them or something like that that's going to be coming out. So I want to know what they're going to be, because I don't think I've got 800 reactions in my face or in my body language in person, let alone what there's going to be in the Teams events themselves. I'm not sure if that's the events or the meetings or what it was, but it'll be interesting just to see what those 800 are, I think.
I think it was quite interesting to see when you got those reactions with a mesh character that they were kind of doing love symbols and stuff like that, and it felt a little bit cringy in the corporate environment. But yeah, no, it'd be good to see what all 800 of those are. Ian, any final thoughts from yourself?
Yes, very excited that Viva finally fully dropped into our teams during and after Ignite. What I am looking forward to, though, from a well-being point of view, is the enhanced managers dashboard for Viva Insights. From collating anonymously, it's not about individuals, about whether someone in a manager's team is really doing too much meeting, how much interaction they do in meetings and things like that. So from a real well-being point of view, from as an employer, I think that's going to be a great addition to teams for sure.
Definitely, I think insights is very important, and to see the manager side of it coming more, being available to more people outside of the people that subscribe to the workplace analytics side of it, I think is really important. You've got to give the confidence to the employees to make sure that they know that it does not pinpoint the individual. It just highlights to a manager, look, your team is feeling a bit like this at the moment, or your team is doing lots of out of hours at the moment. It's up for the manager to interact with the team and find out where any challenges are. It won't kind of go, Ian's working far too many hours, or Ian isn't working out of hours, so tell him to work a little bit harder. It's not about that. It doesn't work like that. It's about trends. It's about looking at a team. And in fact, the team has to be big enough for it to be anonymous. So if you only have one person, I think it's got to be 3 or more people before it would even show those bits anyway. Megan, your final thoughts from Ignite?
There's a couple of things that are coming with like new interfaces with PowerPoint in Teams meetings and how you can integrate your video into the PowerPoint that I'm excited for. The other big thing is the features that are coming to Windows 11 that they announced, but that is a whole podcast in itself because there's so much coming to Windows 11, the whole thing around it. So we'll cover that another time, but it's just good to see what is coming with that new sort of operating system.
Brilliant. Anthony, your final thoughts?
Looking at the timeline for all of this new exciting functionality, some of it seems quite soon. Some of it is very vague in the book of news. So I'm just excited to see when those things arrive, but always thinking about stuff they announced last time. So I think PowerPoint Live is fantastic. We've been doing some training this week and introducing people to that. It just really works well, and now they've got the presenter modes working in there. That works really well. The other stuff that I was interested in was around the compliance piece, so document retention. There's been some big improvements around that, and it was. I know I try every time. There's a lot of wow and a lot of kind of future stuff here, but every time for me it's looking at it and saying what advantage can that give a business, and how can that increase the efficiency of what businesses are doing. So that's really my final thoughts on that. It's good to know about all these things, but let's have them and let's work out exactly where they fit into the jigsaw of the businesses that we work with.
Definitely. No, completely agree. Lots of really good announcements, lots of good technology shown, lots of insights into the future with the metaverse and more. I think lots to be excited about. We need to bring it back to the reality, bring it back to how we're going to enable our users. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on the podcast today. Really good, really interactive. Maybe we'll do a few more of these in the future in terms of subjects that might be relevant to people. Just a quick reminder to anyone that is engaging with your teams, with your departments, looking to further extend the training that you offer to them outside of just the in-person training, which we believe is really important, but have a platform, a library that allows people to go to and refer to. We've got a Dot365, our learning and adoption platform, that aims to help organizations extend the knowledge, give somewhere for their users to go to look up opinionated content. So go and check out dot365.co.uk and see if that would be useful to you. And remember to register for Define tomorrow at live.computerworld.co.uk. Thank you once again for listening to the Dot365 podcast. We'll be back within the next month with more good information about Microsoft 365. Thank you.